Micah here, broadcasting live with Derrick.
What's up? Let us know if we're coming through okay. Just want to double check on our audio. If you guys could send us some comments wherever you're listening from. We're live off Odyssey, Rockfin, Facebook, YouTube, and this will be shared on BitChute and some other platforms. So wherever you're watching right now, whatever time it is, wherever you're at, let us know if our volume, audio, etc. is coming through okay. No echo. We're all good. And then we will continue. We do this every week whenever we possibly can. We've been broadcasting since 2011 and trying to bring you uncensored music, uncensored news and underground music and uncensored music now too.
Uncensored music now, yes.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
don't. We're no longer FCC compliant.
We're not FCC compliant. So, so lots of stuff to go into tonight. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been on. Micah and I were here in Houston, and thanks to everybody who's been supporting since our last show 2 weeks ago. We put out 2 different clips, one about the fluoride story we covered the last show, and also our conversation about AI and UBI and everything else that we're dealing with in the world and all the new technologies. And lots of you responded to that and shared those videos. So thank you for sharing that around. We're going to try to send you some weekly clips in addition to this long format show we do here, about an hour, hour and a half every week. We try to send you just the shorter clips in case you want to share those with your friends and family, or maybe you don't have time to listen to a full episode. Instead, you want to digest in shorter chunks. So yeah, with all that said, tonight we've got,
or maybe you want to share
handful of stories.
the thoughts in just that field. I know that happens sometimes. People tell me, I'm with you on this or that, and many different things, but this issue here is of particular importance, and I like what you said there, but I don't want to share the entire episode or this entire show because I know people will have problems with this or that, and I really just want to cut into whichever issue it may have been at the time. So I like the little clips because I think they allow for more of that, and I appreciate everybody that's joining in. We see the numbers going up right now. And I appreciate everybody that joins the conversation and helps us reach more people with it. So thank you for all being here. I know we've got a fun show.
Right? We've got a few stories that are going to deal with Texas issues, but as we always say, that the show and the issues we talk about, whether or not you're in Houston, like say we're talking about a Houston-based story, you're not in Houston, you're like, what does this matter to me? Typically, the topics we're getting into and the things that we're focused on really do relate to all over the U.S., if not all over the world. So just try to remember that it's not necessarily just about what's happening in Houston or Harris County. We want you to understand that there's the stories we're picking, we feel they specifically have a focus, a broader focus that applies to people in many parts of the world. So before we get into all that, just want to remind you guys, our website is thehoustonfreethinkers.com, thehoustonfreethinkers.com, right there for those who are watching. Been broadcasting since summer of 2011. There you can see our latest episode. And tonight's episode, as with all the previous episodes, will have the source links, everything that we're about to cover and go through in these articles. So please, let's get into all this stuff, and just know that if you hear something that sounds outrageous, or maybe you didn't catch all the details and you want to just get them, you can visit thehoustonfreethinkers.com once the show wraps up, and we'll have all the links there for you in the show notes. So the first one I want to talk about, Micah, and it's I think a big issue going around Texas right now and the U.S. in general. And this relates to Pride Month right now. We just had Pride Parade here in Houston. So there's, as always, a lot of discussions or debates around that. But I think in recent years, it's taken on a different tone. It's part of what people often refer to as like the culture war. And personally, I've found more and more, I think there's some discussions worth having within there. And then a lot of nuance and complexities that tend to get lost in the extremists from both sides. So that kind of sucks that things go that way. But this one, I just want to pick up here with a report from the Houston Chronicle. It says, Houston Democrats' support of transgender care ban, anti-LGBTQ measures has roiled the party. And I don't know if we talked about this a while back, Micah, when it first happened. So this report is from late May, but it's come up more than a handful of times. And it's interesting because I think we talked about when the law passed, as far as like these different, we were talking before about like how far is too far in terms of like, for those of us who care about freedom and liberty and don't want the government in people's lives. People are worried about, well, the kids are being exposed to specific ideologies they wouldn't otherwise, and it's in the books, or it's coming from the psychologist, the doctor, so we need to ban things or try to restrict things. And one of those efforts is to ban access to what is so-called gender-affirming care for minors, those under 18. which specifically is about giving kids hormones and then trying to give them access to surgeries to, remove their breasts or different things like that, what's so-called top and bottom surgery. So there was this bill passed in Texas, and it has passed and has become law. And there was one, I think 2 or 3 actually, Democrats that voted on, cross-party lines, voted with the Republicans. And the Texas Democratic Party, the local Harris County Democratic Party, Houston, et cetera, they all kind of see this as traitorous because the way they feel is it was going to pass either way. The Republicans already had it. Why did these Democrats choose to, betray the party and cross party lines? In particular, one woman, State Rep Sean Theory.
Why did they have an opinion that didn't go with the groupthink?
Why they have a different opinion. So this one state rep, though, Sean Theory, and I've reached out to her trying to get an interview for this show, so we'll see if that happens, just because I thought it was pretty powerful to hear her side of things, because for one, she's a black woman, she's in the Democratic Party, so those are a couple of things that they claim to care about, people of color and women. And the article here just says, she lowered the microphone and shifted a handful of tissues between her hands. And this was back when she was testifying, like why she was voting in favor. She chose to come out and give like a 12-minute speech. It was pre-written. And she said that she was listening to people in her district, which is what a quote-unquote representative is supposed to do.
Yeah.
And some folks might not realize that there are a big chunk of the Black African-American community that tends to be conservative and Hispanic as well. And so her district, particularly in Houston, is made up of largely Black folks. And she said she had conversations with them and she consulted with people in her community. And overall, they felt like this was something they supported, that they were concerned about their kids and things like that. So she spoke up. The bill was Senate Bill 14, and it did ban gender transition care for Texans under 18. And what she's quoted here is saying was, quote, "For me, this discussion is about how best to protect and care for these children as they navigate through the challenging journey of finding the best version of themselves, citing concerns about possible long-term harms of treatments like puberty blockers and hormone therapies." She said, "After listening to the debate today, I believe we should raise the age of 18. So there's a speech you can find of hers on YouTube and on her Facebook channel. And the crazy thing, though, again, Mike, like you said, she had a different opinion, right? So she gets attacked by local groups here in Houston, including like the Meyerland Democrats, the Bayou area Democrats. They all voted to censure her and essentially kind of say, we don't approve of these actions and we think, she's a traitor. And on Twitter, you go to her Twitter account, I mean, she's been pretty much attacked and called transphobic and bigoted, et cetera, et cetera. And she seems like a reasonable person. She, puts back her comments and saying, hey, like, she's sharing racist messages she's getting, hateful messages she's getting now since this. But she said this was based on her own research, spending the last couple of years researching, talking to people in her district. And as she said, she tweeted in April, "I voted my district." When it comes to some of the other similar measures like books and stuff like that, she said, quote, "I met with many of my constituents who are parents of school-aged children, and they were appalled at the sexually graphic content in so many of the books in public schools." So anyways, I wanted to highlight this because it's local, it's Texas, but it's also something that's happening around the country. Like you said, people who are choosing to speak up and ask questions and maybe say things that we're not supposed to discuss are being attacked or censored, or their political careers potentially destroyed, you could say. It's sad to see.
There's kind of a concern I also have is like when you see this backlash against her. There's one quote in here. Representative, I'm not sure how to say her name, but I'm mutilated. Derrick campaigned on being an ally to the LGBTQ plus community, yet she has supported legislation which will harm this community and doesn't align with democratic principles. Read one of the motions from the Meyerland Democrats Club calling on her to reconsider her stance. So like just like that alone right there, right? Like, how do we say this? I think this kind of has a lot of loaded assumptions in it too. I mean, about what's good and bad for this community, like this is going to harm this community by, preventing children under 18 this access, right? As if there's not a lot of other things that they have to figure out, right? Rather than just going straight to, hormone blockers and et cetera. But it just seems weird because it's immediately like doesn't align with democratic principles. What? I mean, I just think that this could be a false dichotomy that an individual could care about the LGBTQ plus community, as she's saying she's an ally, right? At least this person's saying that, and still vote this way. I mean, is that conceivable?
Well, and I don't think it's conceivable to some of the people from the Democratic Party.
Which makes a separation between the LGBTQ plus community in general and a group of people, of partisans that are driving a certain issue here.
Well, not only that, but then they try to, like you were saying a moment ago, try to frame it that trying to have a different opinion on this particular topic automatically means you've become a right winger. You're now a conservative. You're become far right. You're following this. Like that, you go a little further in this article and they start talking about how she has liked posts from the page Gays Against Groomers, which for those who are not familiar with that, it is a conservative group ran by gay folks that tend to sort of see the LGBTQ movement as like not all united. Instead, there's groups that are kind of saying LGB is one thing and the T is kind of a different thing. Not to say they're against it per se, but they feel like the concerns and the interests are not necessarily aligned everywhere. And there are even groups like Gays Against Groomers who are very vocal about different things that they see, in their words, as like, this conversation being pushed on people or the rush to hormones, etc. And they're not coming from necessarily a homophobic perspective, obviously. I mean, they're gay folks themselves. And so it doesn't, as much as people would like to present it, the criticisms of these concerns don't fit neatly into you're just a bigot, but that's what this representative is being treated like.
I think you could be a supporter of women and be against that Netflix series that had those young girls on it.
Sure.
And yeah. I think that might be kind of the closest thing in a quick attempt that my mind could come up with. Like, just because something has to do with the theme or the subject of like a T of trans here, yeah. Like everything that enables transsexuality isn't necessarily what's best for transsexual people. I know that sounds strange, but I think people probably have to know where they are and get to where they make decisions like this. And maybe sometimes kids, as we know, are impressionable. They don't know what they want. They haven't reached the age of reason, whatever you want to say. We don't allow them to smoke for the very same reasons.
Exactly.
It's like a bodily effect. They have to sneak to smoke cigarettes. I mean, I'm just saying. So I don't think it's unheard of, or that it has to be viewed as being anti-LGBTQ. If you don't,
and I think that's
kids to
the worst part about it is being like, those are the extremists on both sides. Accept people at all costs. If you don't like this, then you're a bigot. Or the other side, which maybe does contain people who truly wish gay people didn't exist or whatever. Yeah. Right? You've got these amplified voices.
As if that's the only voices.
One thing here, just to kind of pick up, because she pretty much said what you were saying there, Micah. In her speech, she said that she was concerned about a lack of long-term research on outcomes for transgender children, about side effects from drugs, and about children's inability to understand the potential risk from medical interventions. She likened the ban to age-based regulations on cigarettes and tanning booths, and noted that countries like Sweden and Finland have recently tightened their restrictions on transgender care for younger people. And she said in her talk, quote, several European countries which were on the forefront of administering these treatments have reversed course. They are taking a more cautious approach now to the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in minors. So again, I don't think she said anything too controversial here. It seems to me kind of be I guess I would call it a common sense perspective. And she's being attacked. And here's this other one I'll just sort of pick up. This one is from the Texan. Texas Attorney General's office sues Biden administration, alleging unlawful transgender Title IX policies. And this relates to state laws that would ban biological males from competing in women's sports, which has also become kind of a big, battle sticking point in this conversation, which I can understand. I mean, you've got like professionals in biking speaking out, professionals in swimming speaking out, professionals in skateboarding, professionals. And, one thing I'll say that an argument I've been seeing, because I've been working on a report around this issue, and I sat down with a transgender man transitioning to get their perspective on a lot of these topics. And there are people who are supportive of this community, but also just like this, the representatives say like, hey, this doesn't make sense. This is the problem with saying that there are no biological differences, right? Is you have people and also there are many people I think who are taking it from the stance of like, this is sort of another patriarchal step of just erasing women, that if I wanted to declare myself a woman today, which again, I'm not saying anything wrong with whatever people want to identify, but if I wanted to, the society around now is basically saying that should be accepted at all costs. And if I wanted to go join, and become the champion of women's whatever sport I want to join, you're supposed to celebrate that and give me a trophy. And anybody who questions that and says that, hey, Derrick, maybe you won because you still got male characteristics.
There's definitely a difference from you being able to present or express yourself in any way you so choose, as long as you don't violate other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between that and being accepted by everyone and being validated by everyone.
Sure.
That your presentation, like some people might want to identify as an attack helicopter. It doesn't make everyone have to accept you as an attack helicopter.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that hurts some people's feelings. It hurts some of their dreams and fantasies and such. But that's just how it is sometimes. And we cannot change the whole world to shelter a small group. Like that's not the same as respecting their right to present and to be the self that they want to be. Just because that doesn't mean that they need to be allowed into certain. I guess it's all down to that question: does it make that a woman? A lot of people would say no. Does that then make it out a man? A lot of people would say no. I think that a lot of people that even are transgendered would say no. That that it doesn't. That they never would be a woman in that sense. That they are feminine gendered, right?
Sure.
And so I think that it's another one of those wedge issues in a way where we're making it as if all transgenders' rights are built or fail on this. I mean, maybe there could be a transgender league.
The nuance is lost in there, like you said, and yeah, I mean, it's so this lawsuit that is coming from Texas is specifically to do with, again, these what they're calling unlawful Title IX policies. And so for those who didn't hear about this or don't know about it, Title IX, it came from the U.S. Department of Education. The Office of the Attorney General announced that it's suing the Biden administration, Texas Office of Attorney General, for what it says is an unlawful interpretation of Title IX statutes. Title IX, which is one of the Education Amendments of 1972, prohibits sex discrimination in educational programs. And just in 2021, the Biden administration added the words gender identity and sexual orientation through 2 executive orders that they said would guarantee an educational environment free from discrimination. So this is kind of, in a way, or at least the way Texas is interpreting it, as like trying to force them to go along with accepting certain things like that, because if they don't, like, for example, call somebody on their names or whatever, or in this case, ban biological males from competing in female sports, then they're violating Title IX, violating U.S. law. That's what the Biden administration is trying to make it. So Texas Office Attorney General is suing to say that this is incorrect. They say that the new Title IX protections incorporate, quote, conceptions promoted from the extremist transgender movement and run counter to Texas laws. Texas is challenging this blatant attempt to misuse federal regulatory power to force K through 12 schools, colleges, and universities to accept and implement transgender ideology. This could put at risk over $6 billion in federal funding, because basically, if you don't go along with that, if you violate that, then the feds can withhold funding.
There's a lot of assumptions in allowing, a biological male to compete in women's sports. There's a lot of, I don't know. There's, what is it called? Co-ed. There's some co-ed sports, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's a lot of sports that they're not co-ed for a reason. Like, so I think it's frustrating, and it's kind of, going to be unfortunate blowback to a lot in the transgender community, that these issues have become almost like the hills that flags are on, right? They stand out, and I don't know how many people these are like their issues. I don't know how many LGBTQ plus people these issues here, whether they can play sports.
Well,
they could get drugs as minors.
One thing I've noticed, Mike, over the years that we've been doing this, is that even if like you said, maybe there's a good chunk of the transgender community or LGBT community that's not really like, oh, this is my major issue, this is my thing. But then the media blows it up. They tell them all they're under attack, because that's literally how they're framing these laws. Like, I've heard here in Harris County, Hidalgo, and other politicians that say that, like, we're here to stop these laws that are going to harm children. Laws that are literally just saying maybe kids should wait till they're 18 before they, change their genitalia or attempt to, because that's the thing, is these surgeries don't. Kids who have, it's a whole other topic, but they're not being given a real true informed consent. Like she said, Finland, Sweden, and now the UK and other places outside the US are trying to like roll back some of the things they were rushing into. We're now starting to get a little bit of data, and it doesn't look that great, you know. So there are people who I think, because of the way the media is blowing it up, though, that's being interpreted as like we're under attack. Like these people are coming for us, whereas it's not really trying. Nothing that I've seen so far is trying to roll back what's already been given.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's just like, hey, maybe these books shouldn't be allowed in schools. Hey, maybe, you know, men shouldn't be able to compete in women's sports. What I was saying earlier is I've started to see now like a sort of a feminist critique of that, and saying that, look, this is just another way that men are erasing women from female spaces. If a man can just declare himself a woman and come and win all of our sports, or, you know, be recognized for his bravery or whatever, and, you know, that I don't know, I think that's a fair argument to say like that it could be another way that does end up hurting women and equality in the long term. Not trans people themselves, but men being able to just declare themselves one day and then be celebrated and then come in and win at whatever sport they want and get all these accolades and whatever else and be on the cover of magazines.
Especially when you think that a lot of the female leagues that are like gender specific leagues were created to create a level playing field based on biological differences inherent in, you know, people that are born male and people that are born female. So it's almost as if you know, this thing out there, like I said, I think it could be really bad for LGBT people that like so many people are choosing this as a hill to die on, because of the fact that it really doesn't have much to do with your individual right to express or be with whoever you want to be or live how you want to live. It has to do with whether, you know, society will let you go into leagues that are formed for biological females, you know. And I think that if you like to expect the entire world to just give some stamp of approval to your choice, I don't think any group on earth gets that. So why should you?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Guys, you're listening to Live Free, Think Free. We do this every week. You can find us at thehoustonfreethinkers.com. We're going to continue getting into some of these stories, still talking about Houston and Texas, but again, these issues are happening all over the United States right now. These laws are being passed to the point of what we were just talking about with the previous issue. I saw just yesterday there was a third federal court that overturned attempts to ban access to gender affirming care for those under 18. So it doesn't seem like the courts are siding with the people on this one, or maybe some of the people, I guess, but definitely going to be interesting times ahead. This one will switch gears to the climate issue, which is also equally controversial, and this is focused on what's happening in Houston. Houston is a major city.
I heard they might be shutting down pizza ovens in New York.
They're trying to shut down pizza ovens. Actually, to add to that, Houston, New York just got federal approval to do basically a tariff, a toll to enter Midtown. You have to pay $23 a day now if you want to go drive into Midtown. Like,
yeah,
pretty crazy.
That's the way to smart cities.
That's
right?
the way to start limiting people's driving and get. You know, they said it's going to make $9 billion for the metro or whatever, and encourage more of that. And
can you walk into the inner city?
I guess you can, but it's mainly about trying to discourage individual vehicle use. So Houston itself, though, like most major cities, is aiming to be net zero. However you get there, I don't know, by 2050. And this is from U of H researchers published just a couple weeks ago. They basically did a study of like, where's Houston, where's Texas on this? And it says Texans love to drive. Our cars and trucks travel more than 260 billion miles every year, consuming about 1 million barrels of oil per day. The toll on the environment, they say, is substantial. If we add rail, aviation, marine, off-road vehicles, and Texas transportation sector emits 230 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. And I don't know where these sources are from, so I'm just sharing what they're claiming here. And so the point is, obviously, the goal is to get to zero emission. They said they're trying to accelerate the transition to zero emission vehicles or net zero fuels. How that's going to happen, we're not sure. The federal government has set this lofty goal of cutting all greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector by 2050, in the next 25 years. Pretty crazy to imagine what that will take. What that means for Texas is how it would impact the economy hasn't been addressed. Our research, this is again from the University of Houston, suggests Texas is unlikely to reach net zero in the transportation sector by 2050, even under the most aggressive policies. And so far, even less aggressive policies aren't under serious consideration. What happens next will matter not just for Texas, which can't meaningfully reduce carbon without tackling transportation, but for the entire country And it's saying because greenhouse gases don't stop at borders, Texas is big, etc. Researchers at University of Houston, to understand what the state faces, we analyzed 3 different scenarios: business as usual scenario, an extension of the current policies. 70% of all new cars and trucks sold in the state are expected to be zero emission vehicles by 2050. Second scenario would require 100% of new sales to be zero emission vehicles by 2050. And the most aggressive target would require all new sales to be zero emission by 2040. The discouraging result, they say, is that even under these most aggressive targets, coupled with carbon-free electricity grid, Texas transportation sector will not get to net zero by 2050. There will still be, unfortunately, according to them, older gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles that will remain on the road, and the cost of getting to that point will be staggering. The cumulative cost for charging infrastructure for passenger vehicles will range from $19 billion to $35 billion between now and 2050. It doesn't include the cost of acquiring land, probably taking land from people in some cases, building infrastructure required to deliver electricity to stations, replacing gas and diesel-powered vehicles.
There's no pollution from all that, I guess. Right?
Yeah, I'm sure in the process of building that there won't be any pollution. We estimate that charging all those vehicles will require as much as 70 terawatts hours of new generation, expanding the state's electricity grid by 20% when it's already struggling. Additional transmission lines to support this, $3 billion. Then there's the environmental cost of remediation for all the gas stations that will no longer be needed, cleaning up the sites, $2 billion. So it goes on. And basically the point here is it's going to cost a lot of money. This is what critics have been saying for a while. It's going to cost a lot of money, and even under the most extreme circumstances, which probably would involve restricting freedoms in some ways, because they're not getting to zero emissions voluntarily. I guarantee you that. If they go to those most extreme circumstances, it still won't reach their target goals, they claim. So not sure.
I've seen some articles recently more about, like, instead of zero emissions, more like sustainable energy, like being able to consume and replace, and it's interesting. I was surprised to see that about New York pizza ovens. I'm just like, wow. And I guess when you section off things like piece by piece like that, first we're coming after the pizza ovens, then they're going for the backyard barbecues,
Well, and we're seeing it happen in Europe, where it's already some of these policies are much further along, like we've seen in the UK, where it's they're calling them low traffic zones. So it's like you got to get a permit, and they're like, oh, there's no conspiracy here. We're not stopping people from driving. It's just now they got to pay a fee if they want to drive into this part of town during certain hours a day. It's not the same thing. And and we're seeing those policies. Here's the one in New York City.
So a lot of people are probably going to get married to someone from the neighborhood.
Driving into Midtown Manhattan could cost $23. In New York City, they're calling it congestion pricing. That's what the name for this kind of policy is. So these are all part of this climate change narrative that, have your opinion, whether you think it's real or not. The point is these policies are coming, and they are going to limit individual rights, and definitely people are coming for the ability to drive. I've even heard, as I've been doing the mayoral campaigning, I went to an event last week, this coalition of environmental groups in Houston, and I'm not going to name which group, but there was definitely a group that works in Houston that was sort of, one of the members of this group was kind of celebrating or looking forward to the day when it's not just Main Street with no traffic, but all the streets are shut down. There's only foot traffic and no more cars. And so there definitely are people, whether they have good intentions or they just hate cars or whatever, or they believe that they're doing something good. Those policies there's a place for them, and there's people trying to push them. So
I just wonder about the other unintended consequences of not being able to commute very well, or to transport goods, or only Amazon being able to transport goods, So.
That's a good point. I bet you the corporations, just like with COVID, the corporations allowed to continue and operate.
Yeah.
The military allowed to continue polluting.
But your pizza,
but you, in your personal pizza oven, your gas stove, that's the thing in the UK.
Your
gas
old
stoves,
booty car running on gas.
Those are the problem, right? Yeah. So here's another one I want to jump into. Again, we're still kind of looking at Texas now, and this is sort of related to some of the stuff we've talked about here. And it's also, I think, one of those examples you put under the category of trying to do something good, government messing it up, or at least something bad masked as an effort to do something good.
One or the other, right?
One or the other, right? I don't know what's in their head, but this is what it's about. Age verification requirement to access sexual material online signed into law. This is Texas. This is the place that so many people came to because they think it's this freedom place, which in some ways it is, but in other ways it really isn't. Cannabis laws and other things like that. Texas follows a trend of other states enacting online age verification laws, which has prompted free speech and privacy lawsuit challenges. Greg Abbott, just a few weeks ago, signed this legislation which would restrict access to sexual material harmful to minors and require age verification for online porn sites. Again, something that probably needs, has some good meaning behind it. 2 reps from Texas, one Matt Sheehan of Plano, Republican, another Republican, Senator Angela Paxton of McKinney. They sponsored this bill, and they said that the proliferation of pornographic material online has raised concerns for parents, how easy it is to get, and I would definitely agree with that. It's all over social media, even like people don't realize like there's lots of porn, even not on porn sites, just on a place like Twitter or YouTube, and sometimes kids might stumble into it. But it requires that a website that intentionally publishes sexual material harmful to minors to verify the user's identity through digital ID or a third-party verification system that uses government-issued identification. Websites found in violation will be subject to fines and penalties. So a website, including social media platforms whose content is more than 1/3 sexual material, will require virtual identification. Said sites will also require to post on their landing pages multiple Texas Health and Human Service warnings about addiction and other mental health problems associated with viewing porn. They talk about studies looking at the effects of porn on the brain. I think there's there's a conversation to be had again here, but is this the right step? I don't know. Texas is not the only state to take steps in limiting children's ability to access sexually explicit material. Louisiana also has a similar law. Age verification, and to me the big thing is using a digital ID, right? So I started to look into this. There's more you can find out. Again, these links will all be listed there.
That one thing said like it put the burden on the sites.
Yeah, so it's up to the sites to kind of do it, but also, and this is why I think it's like, all right, there's a bigger picture going on here. Texas has already introduced a digital identification process called Texas by Texas, which created a single digital identity for access to services, agencies, similar to other states' digital driver's license programs. And I remember reading about this. These are going to be rolling out soon. Texas, they're already starting to build the infrastructure. They're not like mandatory yet. They're called digital driver's licenses. And so I looked it up, Texas for Texas. Here it is, if you're watching on the screen. Texas Department of Information Resources, Digital Services, Government to Citizen. Project title, Texas by Texas Digital Assistant. Project date, September 2019. So they've been working on this for a couple of years. Pilot project 2019, fully implemented as a web app, October 2021, as a mobile app by February 2022. So it's active, it's out there. And sure enough, it looks just like a COVID passport or digital identity you might see anywhere else. And they call it the state's official digital assistant. And so you can use Texas by Texas now. If you want to get on, you use porn, I guess the sites, they have to list those warnings, and they have to probably collaborate with the government in some way. And you would have to, I guess, get an account on here to make sure that you can verify yourself and watch porn if you want, or even if you're not on porn, a social media site that maybe they say, oh, you have 1/3 sexually explicit material. But for me, it's like this is definitely, I think, a good cause being done in the wrong way. And again, it's pushing more digital identities, age verification to get on the internet, like to get on a website. It's not the internet itself yet, but a website. What do you think about this, Micah? Problem looking for, nail looking for a hammer.
Old school porn magazines are going to make a comeback.
Yep, magazines coming back.
Yeah, perhaps. We've seen a lot of things where old media, radio and print, continues to function. I don't know. It's difficult to say. I mean, obviously, it gives opportunity for probably all things that you research to be cataloged even more thoroughly.
Yeah, well, I worry about it's just a kind of a
know where you are when
getting people comfortable with the idea that we've seen floated in the past of that there should be an internet ID to get online, and that's how we can stop hate crime, and that's how we can stop terrorism and this and that. Everybody just has to sign on to one single all-encompassing internet ID. Or like with China, they have the Weibo app, which is like the all-in-one everything app. Elon Musk wants to make his X app, which he's trying to turn Twitter into, the all-in-one app, like, right? Got everything, bank account, health account, like Aaron Russo warned about on Freedom of Fascism back in 2006. The one app to rule them all is kind of how I see it. But that's kind of what it makes me think of, is like, sure, it starts out about porn and keeping kids safe, but then before long, how long until that Texas by Texas thing is needed to get on anywhere on the internet, or, okay, well, now it's gambling sites, or now it's this thing, and it's, or if you're on those right-wing hate sites, then it's just, I could see this being exploited in so many ways. So
Oh yeah, count on it. I mean, why wouldn't it be? I mean, I just am kind of not surprised, and we.
And again, it's Texas, so I don't see this story making it. I just happen to come across it. Like, I haven't seen this in the news really.
Well, it's how things are dressed up, right? Like you said, here it is. Well, how do we get this in here? Well, we have to use it to control. We're going to use it to control. Well, let's use it to control something that most people will think is bad to begin with.
Exactly.
It's really about control, period.
Like they pick a topic that most
bad.
people would agree, like, yeah, that's reasonable. That sounds like not a bad thing to do. And then it's like the next step. It's like, okay, well, now this other topic that we think is bad is also, you need an ID to get onto that thing, right?
Yeah.
And then once people are already using this Texas by Texas, then how hard it is to say, okay, now in order
Well, no,
to do
then there'll
anything,
be discounts,
you just need
right?
to,
You
exactly.
can save if
you're using your Texas by Texas app, you get discounts for showing your retina scan or whatever.
That's the gas pump.
That's how China is rolling out part of their digital identity systems and their social credit score and their CBDC. They started
as
out.
we don't have to go into places or do anything like that, as the Internet of Things becomes more prevalent, more and more contactless checkpoints, I can see that being integrated with that. And
I agree.
You go to Kroger, you don't have to see a person, you just get your head scanned or whatever.
How come you don't have your tattoo? You're unscannable. You're unscannable. All right, probably time for a music break. We've been at this 35 minutes, maybe be a good break. I want to play one of my new songs, guys. I just dropped this brand new song this week. It's called Guard Your Heart, and I'll be performing it. We mentioned a couple of weeks ago we have a show coming up from Visionary Noise, which is Micah's label and booking company, booking outlet, and I'm running for mayor. So there's the flyer. I was trying to find a picture and see if we can get that looking. This is the flyer for it if you're in Houston. It's
Axelrad.
Free the City at Axelrad. Very popular, cool place. Brought to you by Visionary Noise, Broze for Mayor campaign. Tsunami Force. We'll get some of their music maybe later. They're really cool. Reggae, funk, roots. Party Mouth. There's like pop, punk, rock, fun stuff. And then 33, I'll be performing my music. So this is a brand new song called Guard Your Heart. I call it the self-love anthem of the summer. So I hope you guys enjoy this. We'll be right back. You're listening to Live Free, Think Free. Stay tuned.
Check 1 2 33. Yo, I just been reflecting again on everything I've been through, and I feel like I have a little bit of knowledge to impart. So this one goes out to anyone who's struggling. I know you've been struggling, I can see it in your eyes. You're tired of fake, cause he keeps telling you lies. The world seems so heavy and you can't see the light. You're so sick of the way that she always starts a fight. You know you're meant for better, you can feel it in your bones. The judgment's hateful words like sticks and stones. I know what it's like to carry all that weight, the emotional baggage that holds you back, self-hate. Guard your heart and protect your mind. Show yourself some love, girl, you're one of a kind. You deserve the best, don't keep playing these games. The journey begins once you're ready to change. Guard your heart and protect your mind. Show yourself some love, man, you're one of a kind. You deserve the best, don't keep playing these games. The journey begins once you're ready for change. Once you're ready for change. Once you're ready to change, the universe will conspire with you to bring you that which you deserve, what you need. Just be ready for it. There's so much to see and there's so much to learn. I'm blessed to be on this earth, just taking my turn. Being the best me I can be while you flourish equally. We're kings and queens claiming our crowns only to see that everyone has a purpose and a place. It's up to us to discover what challenges we must face. Like children still learning, we're bound to make mistakes. We take the lessons and grow, our pain was not a waste. Guard your heart and protect your mind. Show yourself some love, girl, you're one of a kind. You deserve the best, don't keep playing these games. The journey begins once you're ready to change. Guard your heart and protect your mind. Show yourself some love, man, you're one of a kind. You deserve the best, don't keep playing these games. The journey begins once you're ready for change. I was ready for change. I needed change. Shit, it was either change or die. And these lessons that I learned, I'm offering them to you and hope that you can avoid some of the roads I went down. Yeah. Lately I've been writing letters to my younger self. Don't depend on others for love, love yourself. Remember your mother, she brought you into this place. Forgive your father, he's still still an emotional basket case. Love is more than sex, don't just jump in the sheets. Take time to look in the eyes of every stranger you meet. The sooner you stop caring what they think, you will rise. Be honest, trust yourself, and don't fall for their lies. Guard your heart and protect your mind. Show yourself some love, girl, you're one of a kind. You deserve the best, don't keep playing these games. The journey begins once you're ready to change. Guard your heart and protect your mind. Show yourself some love, man, you're one of a kind. You deserve the best, don't keep playing these games. The journey begins once you're ready for change. You are powerful. You are beautiful. And you are free. Step into your divinity. Guard your heart and protect your mind. Show yourself some love, girl, you're one of a kind. You deserve the best, don't keep playing these games. The journey begins once you're ready to change. Guard your heart and protect your mind. Show yourself some love, man, you're one of a kind. You deserve the best, don't keep playing these games. The journey begins once you're ready for change. Guard your heart, protect your mind.
All right, welcome back. We're back. That was my song, Guard Your Heart. You can find my music at 33 is Here on all the different platforms where you might listen to music. Let's just jump right into it. We got some more stories here. This one, I just want to mention, we don't have to cover the details. You can find this at The Last American Vagabond. It's one of my most recent articles. The FBI's entrapment of Americans continues with the latest arrest of an 18-year-old with developmental issues. In the last couple weeks, you might have heard some reports in the mainstream talking about the arrest of a new terrorist, which confirms not only that there's domestic terrorism on the rise, but that we need to keep funding the war of terror, and that it's doing its job. And unfortunately, as has been the case more than a handful of times in the last couple of decades, when you start looking into the details of the case, you find an individual who may be mentally unstable, definitely not in a good place, being taken advantage of, being kind of pushed and coerced, and I would say entrapped by agents of the FBI. In this case, it's an 18-year-old young man named Mateo Ventura, Wakefield, Massachusetts. He was arrested and charged with knowingly concealing the source of material support or resources for a foreign terrorist organization. The U.S. Department of Justice says that he provided financial support to ISIS, which sounds like a pretty big thing, right? Until you start getting into this and you realize that this gentleman was basically, again, when he started talking to these people when he was 16, what he thought was somebody who's working with ISIS, and it was actually FBI agents pretending to be that, and they coached him.
Someone started talking to a 16-year-old child online.
Yep, an FBI agent posing as a alleged terrorist. So talking to him, underage, until the point when he got to 18, and then they could charge him as an adult.
That sounds groomy.
Once they, it definitely has a groomy kind of feel to it. So they also told him, don't tell anyone, of course, about these communications.
So they told him,
including his father, don't talk about this to anybody. Don't tell your parents we're talking to you.
Yeah, that seems weird that a law enforcement agency would tell a minor child online to not tell their parents something.
Yeah, I think so. And so his dad now, after his son's arrest, says that his son is being railroaded basically, and said that he suffered from childhood development issues, that he was bullied at school. He said, quote, he was born prematurely. He had brain developmental issues. I had the school do a neurosurgery evaluation on him, and they said his brain was underdeveloped. He was suffering endless bullying at school, with other kids taking food off his plate, tripping him in the hallway, humiliating, laughing at him. So then the federal government decided, why not take advantage of him?
Yeah, that's probably how they heard about him, because they do. I mean, who runs those schools? I guess it's state, right? But
somehow
they have like some testing and reporting. I don't know. Maybe I'm
not sure. I mean, there could be some pipeline there. But somehow they found
Patsy school to Patsy pipeline.
The criminal complaint makes it clear that Ventura gave the undercover FBI agent gift cards in increments of just $25. So over a period of 2 years, he sent small amounts of money via gaming sites like Steam and PlayStation Network and Google Play. Altogether, over 2 years, he sent $965 as a minor in the form of $25 gift cards, and $705 after he turned 18 years old. So less than $2,000 in material support for a terrorist organization via gift cards on.
There wasn't a
gaming
terrorist
platforms.
organization.
There never was a terrorist organization, of course. It was just the FBI.
That gets me right there.
It's like the crime never happened, right? That's the whole thing of like this entrapment that we've been dealing with since 9/11 and even before. But they can get you to the point of, hey, if you press this button, a bomb's going to blow up somewhere. And if you think about that, or even say, yes, I'm down for it.
What if you thought it was
Derrick
BS and you're
button.
just like, what if you thought it was BS? You know, like, what if you really thought it was BS? Like, you didn't believe it was.
Well,
that,
in this case, it's very.
Then they'll say you thought it was real.
In this case, it's frustrating because, so as you can see in the article, several times they interacted with this young man, and they keep having to, over a number of years, try to coach him and get him to go along with it. The interaction between 16-year-old Ventura and the FBI began in 2021. Again, they came to his house, told his dad he was looking up bad websites, and that he was interested in hijra, like migration towards territories controlled by ISIS. The FBI agent spoke in broken English to pretend to be, from the Middle East, and said he was strong and looked like lion after he took a selfie or a video of himself with a beard. And they said, trying to cheer him on, telling him.
So they felt like he had some lack.
They were giving him
and self-esteem.
They were giving him camaraderie.
It's a gang mentality,
exactly.
Right? Doesn't it just sound like a gang? This guy.
I think you used the word right, grooming. Like they know, they recognize this guy has a lot. You can pull it up on the lastamericanvagabond.com if you want. If not, well, I remember most of it. So the point is, this is another case where a person who had no means to really commit a crime is all of a sudden being called a terrorist, a criminal, because the FBI brings on some fake agent. My name will be up there. Brings some fake agent, and from then tells him, send us money and we'll just click on my name. I think it'll open. And we'll, you'll join ISIS. They had him record a video where he pledged like support for ISIS. And again, that's something they can use against him. But it's an 18-year-old kid who's got developmental issues. His dad says he's born prematurely. They're talking in broken English, trying to tell him, he looks good like lion, build up his ego and make him feel welcome. And the other thing, the catch though, is, maybe some people say, well, Derrick, though, what if he did meet real terrorists? He wanted to do it, then he really could harm somebody. But then even the FBI's own papers, as reported by The Intercept, show that he kept coming up with excuses to not do it. They said, okay, buy a ticket and come meet us and we'll take you to Turkey and you can join our terrorist friends and whatever. And then every time they gave him an opportunity to do that, he chose to not do it. For whatever reason, he'd come up with an excuse and say, this isn't the right time. It's not good. It's a kid. It's 16, 17, 18 years old, right? So rather than taking, just one example.
He's not going to do it. He's not committed. He's chickening out. He's talked to some adult online for 2 years that has, like, God knows what he's talked to him about, and felt this, like, obviously felt up the freaking kid's psychological lacks and identity problems and all this stuff. And if you're uneducated, unpaid gang leader can do this, wouldn't you imagine an FBI team could?
Well, look, listen to this. So in September 2020, who told him he was no longer going for the excursion. He was not going to leave. He'd been hurt in a bad fall.
That just makes me sad hearing that.
It's sad. That's what I'm saying. The most thing is sad, and because he has developmental issues.
Where he's telling him he can't go. That's the part that really.
In January 2023, that he reached out again. He apologized for not being in touch. He said he was ready to travel. They sent him a gift card and he booked a flight April 10th. So this was just a couple months ago that this happened. This happened this year. Instead of taking the flight, though, he calls the FBI and tries to turn in this alleged terrorist. So, and he did say some crazy things. If you read like the text, he's like, give me millions of dollars or I'm going to turn this in. And again, he clearly is showing signs of being unstable, like mentally unstable.
Look at the pressure he's under. They got him thinking he's about to blow up some stuff.
And then he basically tried to turn them in, never really went on the flight to go anywhere, right? And then shortly after, he's arrested. Now he's being held on being a terrorist. His dad said he's being railroaded. And he never had touch with ISIS, never was in touch with any real terrorist group. Time and time again, they manipulated him. And when he showed he didn't want to go, they kept trying to persist and like encourage him to do more. This is a picture of him with his dad right here, just a young dude, again, born, he said, late or prematurely and had issues. These are the people that they call terrorists. I don't understand how this.
To me, it seems kind of terrifying to prey on a mentally ill minor child in that manner. That seems terrifying. If you ask me, I'm scared knowing that this FBI, whatever,
I think that
that's scary.
I think
that's
Americans should be scared because think about that. If you have a situation like that where an FBI agent finds your child out there. Maybe you got somebody out there listening to this might have a kid who's not, really the most popular kid at school or anything like that,
Maybe
right?
he draws war pictures.
Getting picked on for something, and somehow he comes across to somebody's attention and makes its way to the FBI, and they decide, they want to just call this their next big terror win, right? This guy's facing life in prison now. I mean, they're not just saying it's not something small, guys. They're literally saying this guy provided material support for ISIS, the people who cut off heads, the people who do, again, they're going to parade this around and they're going to add it and chalk it up to one more number of terrorists that they caught. And it's disgusting.
So they're doing better than TSA. They caught one non-terrorist terrorist.
They caught something.
That's it.
All right, let's go into this next one. A little bit of COVID update for those of you who didn't know and haven't caught on. There's been a grift going on the last couple of years.
And we talked about this back during the beginning of it, but now there's it's come out from a watchdog group saying that there's over $200 billion has probably been stolen from two large COVID relief initiatives. The one that funded small businesses, the PPP loan, and the emergency injury disaster loan. Turns out that the Inspector General's report said at least 17% of all COVID and PPP funds were dispersed to potentially fraudulent actors. The fraud estimated for COVID-19 economic injury disaster loan program is more than $136 billion. That's a staggering number, right? Which represents a third of the total money spent on the program. And the Paycheck Protection fraud estimate is $64 billion. You add those two together, and you're at $250 billion almost. Jeez. Just on the fraud side. So yeah, I don't know what. That's the main thing I wanted to bring up because we knew that
all kinds of scams going on.
We knew it was going to happen. It goes into some more details in there, saying like how it went. How there wasn't enough oversight, and they also tell us that they always expect some scam, fraud, etc. when the government cheese comes out, but this is a much higher number than they typically see. So more fraud to get that government cheese.
Yeah, and I think that this is coming from the mainstream, the Associated Press, and it's good that this is coming out because anybody who's paying attention could see that this was going to happen. Like you said, Micah, with anytime there's a big handout like this, there's going to be scammers and just the general person trying to, I'm going to apply 2 times or I'm going to use a fake name, whatever. But beyond that, people who are
I got
taking
some little business and I'm going to say I have 3 employees.
Yeah, whatever it may be. You have that level, but then you also have, I think, the sort of the grift of the government. We got to go back and remember, we can't forget this.
Well, if this much can be taken from all the little guys, look, it doesn't. Never mind all this other stuff that's going. Like when they get to crank out all these billions, to just lose 1 over at the Pentagon doesn't seem that big a deal, right? To just lose a little 2 over here in the CIA doesn't seem like that big a deal, right? For the all these little alphabet soups,
Well, the other thing too, I'm trying to remember back to, I don't remember what politicians it was right away, but I know that there was reporting on the beginning, the early days of COVID, the senators and Congress people who had stocks and were holding stocks in these companies right before COVID happened. And there was some announcement of an investigation supposed to happen. I'm sure it got forgotten in all the days of terror around COVID, but there was clear examples of some kind of foreknowledge of people within Congress who thought, I want to buy these stocks of Moderna and these other companies. Moderna was largely an unknown company that hadn't produced any kind of vaccine or any kind of product prior to that. So the point is, the great grift is correct because there was this grift, this level of what they're talking about, which is, I think, a little more mainstream, normal scamming thing that's going to happen. There's a lot of money. There seemed to be some kind of government, people getting rich off this, more billionaires being made than ever, all these different examples of, so you had multiple levels of grifting.
Meanwhile, other things being shut down, So
yeah, exactly.
It's just pure chaos.
The businesses getting shut down, the small businesses getting shut down.
And funny money being distributed to looters, what's that do to the?
Because this is only a small portion of the overall money that was being distributed, right?
And I actually brought it to the show deliberately because I found it in some other sources, and then I found the AP thing on it, and I'm like, look, if it's this pronounced on the stuff that they're telling us about people taking advantage of the government like that, right? Like these are the people who looted from the free program is what they're saying, right? Mm-hmm. That, like you said, look how much bigger the other aspect of the iceberg must be, So I thought that was interesting. But let's move on. You know, I don't know if y'all like chicken or not, but it turns out, man.
Wow, I can't believe this is happening so fast. Like just in the last couple of weeks, we talked about Elon Musk's Neuralink now being approved for human use, for human trials, and now lab-grown chicken. I actually haven't fully read into it. I just been seeing the headline go around. So
yeah, no doubt. It kind of, Americans are one step closer to being able to buy chicken grown from animal cells, also known as lab-grown meat. And you're gonna love the name of the developer, Good Meat. It shouldn't even be called meat, right? Good Meat, the developer of such a chicken product. Yeah, I guess at one time there was a piece of chicken. Announced Tuesday that it received a so-called no questions letter from the FDA. This letter states that the administration is satisfied that the product is safe to sell in the United States. You know, they sell a lot of stuff in the United States. I want y'all to think about that, okay? So the FDA issued a similar letter to another company that makes meat from cultured chicken cells, Upside Foods.
I've been seeing them promote these companies a lot lately.
Yep, you know, we saw that Whopper, right? The unwhopper, whatever they called it. We've been hearing about eating the bugs now, and now there's this. That's a big step, and it doesn't mean it. You know, it's like, oh, this is almost chicken or something. That's a big step, but it doesn't mean shoppers will be able to buy the product just yet. You got to be a little bit more patient to get your lab chicken. To get the green light to sell to customers, both companies need to go ahead from the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So the FDA's letter clears a crucial step in bringing good meat to restaurants and retail in the U.S. Good Meat said in a statement Tuesday. You can bet they're proud. Adding that it's now working with the U.S. Department of Agriculture on necessary approvals. Not sure how you work on approvals, but
we're trying to get the right cronies from our industry in there first, and then we're going to get the approval.
Yeah, that's it. We need to have the head of the USDA.
We need to have some fancy dinners together.
We need some Good Meat heads of the USDA. Good Meat advertises its product as meat without slaughter. That stuff never dies. A more they say it's a more humane. It was never alive, probably. A more humane approach to eating meat. You got to ask yourself. I mean, I don't know. Could it be more humane? Meat grown in a vat. What's the life like for that thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Supporters hope that cultured meat will help fight climate change. There we are. Bing, bing, bing. No more cows farting. By reducing the need for traditional animal agriculture. You know, that'll also, there goes working, you know, the sheep. And no more greenhouse gases, cultivated or lab grown, whatever. But the point on this, you know, what's it going to take? I mean, is there going to be more pollution to build all the labs and the little vats for the chickens?
I find this one to be really interesting because, like I said, I've seen CNN cover it more than a couple of times. Mention these two companies and some others. And I think it's interesting because so I'm a vegan, and I'm not a vegan because of climate change. I think a lot of people come from that route, especially the younger generation. They're being taught that you know, you need to be vegan for the climate. I'm, you know, tend to be vegan for the animals is my feelings. But point is, I want to have these conversations.
I'm for the animals.
Like, I wonder though if people were offered, because this isn't lab grown. I mean, this isn't 3D printed meat. This isn't meat made from trash. This isn't meat made from bugs. It's taking an original chicken cell that was at some point from some real chicken down the line, and then culturing that, fermenting it, and then creating like this chicken product or whatever. I've seen this happen, and my thought is, let's imagine, or if you believe in,
well, that'll turn me into a vegan real quick if that's all the meat.
But this isn't vegan though. That's the thing.
No, but that's what I'm saying. This might turn some meat
if that's all there is. Yeah. Well, so that's the thing to make too, is the distinction is these companies make it clear this isn't a vegan product because it has an original animal source. And so that's one thing. So this wouldn't apply to vegans. This is more being marketed specifically to meat eaters to try to get them to not eat meat. So there's not slaughtering of animals. And so on that level, it's like, okay, I like the idea of less animals being killed, for me, again, from my vegan perspective, but I always think it should come down to choice. And I wonder, just like, if we could objectively trust the science, and what if we found that like
that animal just suffering?
Well, if like animal farming was really killing the planet, right? And obviously there's destruction with whether you're talking animal agriculture or
more animals were being taken care of all the time because
but let's just imagine that, right? Do you think like would people? I guess what I'm trying to get at is if we tested it with sources we could trust, and this cell cultured, non-real meat but from an animal source was found to be 100% safe, no long-term effects, et cetera,
yeah.
Would people, and it tasted the same, I still think people wouldn't voluntarily choose to accept it, even though it came from an animal source. because it's just too weird, I think, for people. And so that's my thing is I don't
Well,
have
say-
any hopes that it's going to catch
It's kind of
on.
like GMOs. in a
It's going to
way.
have to be forced, I think. I don't think people will do this because even the weird element of it will just, again, it's marketed towards meat eaters to try to get them to become vegan. For me, I don't want to eat that.
It's kind of like GMOs that haven't been proven to have the bad side effects versus the ones that have. The ones that haven't, you still can't get people that are against GMOs to want to eat them.
People don't feel good about it just
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I get that. Like, there's going to be some like just distrust and mistrust in general. As a vegan, I'm not interested. It's like not that
Because
doesn't.
you're not going to start eating chicken now just because it's not.
Yeah, and even with the current vegan products that are out there, like the Bill Gates burgers and other stuff, most of that stuff is marketed to like brand new vegans who are trying to maybe make that transition.
Did you say Bill Gates burgers?
Yeah, that's what I call the Beyond Burger and the Impossible, the ones funded. I don't know why it's not funded by him, but that stuff is marketed like when you're brand new to being a vegan and you don't know what to cook or you don't have time. I get it, you're being busy, just like all the food that is meant to be microwaved or put in the oven. It's like you're busy food, right? I get that, but for myself and others who try to do like whole food, plant-based vegan, we eat lentils and chickpeas and this and that. I'm not trying to get into the whole thing. My point is there's so much other options for me as opposed to eating fake meat, whether it's cultured in a lab or it's 3D printed or it's fucking trash or it's poop or any of the crazy things that they are literally trying right now. I don't see this thing catching on. That's why I do think the only way something like this would happen is if it's forced. If it's like, because people are so close to their diet and our choices about diet.
It's a very
so personal.
It's an intimate thing. You're taking.
I don't see people buying into it, but anyways, we're about almost. Well, we got what, one or two left to get into.
Yeah, I know that we wanted to get into this Paris
let's
summit.
mention this one at least.
It turns out that around 50 heads of state, along with their representatives from international.
Go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off. I'm going to put it on screen so you guys can see this. It's a big meeting that we're just learning about. We at least just want to mention it. Maybe next week we'll have more details, but this is what we got so far.
Yeah, it's interesting because I originally had a article from a French paper that I wanted to get into, but every which way I try to go to it, it's not linking. So we're putting up a different one from time. But yeah, it turns out that around 50 heads of states, along with representatives from international institutions, from civil society, will attend this summit hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron on Thursday and Friday in Paris. That's today and tomorrow, but they're today and tomorrow, which might have been some other time. The objective is to develop a new global financial system. So the most vulnerable, and here's the pitch, right? So the most vulnerable countries will be better equipped to combat both poverty and climate change.
Climate change. Wow. So that, I mean, wow. That alone is just like, where's that going? And that was just today, right? This is the right date?
Yeah, this is just this week that
is being reported on.
It's occurring today and tomorrow, Thursday and Friday of this week.
So 50 heads of state and other people coming to talk about how to remake the financial system, working with the World Bank and IMF to fight climate change.
It says they've been criticized. I want to know who's been out there criticizing the World Bank and
IMF's not doing enough.
And they've never responded to my criticisms.
Yeah, why are they listening to other people's criticisms?
Now they're listening to this about them not doing enough.
And it's interesting. The criticisms they always listen to seem to be the ones that further their causes.
I've noticed that. I think it's so amazing. It's like childish stuff, but it's really like Time Magazine.
It's called the Summit for a New Global Financing Pact, which heads of state from Germany, Brazil, Senegal. So it seems like, and this is the moves I'm noticing, Mike, because a lot of it is like the BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. It's the global South as well. Yeah. Mexico wants to join BRICS.
And that's the thing. The other
moves are being made outside of the U.S.
The other article that we can't get to did speak a lot about it being a new contract between the global North and South.
Interesting that it calls it that. Wow. So, yeah, we'll try to give you guys some details on that. As Micah said, it's just happening today and then tomorrow. So like it's already Friday morning, and probably in Paris right now.
So we got Macron and 100 other heads of state and bigwigs or whatever you want to call them, meeting. And didn't we talk about Macron being one of those future?
I'm sure he is a young global leader.
Yeah,
they've all been visiting. Well, and also while we're talking right now, the World Economic Forum's been having what they call their summer Davos, which they meet in winter in Davos, Switzerland. But right now they're having their summer Davos called the New Champions Meeting, and it's been in China. And this week they've been meeting with Xi right after Bill Gates was there meeting with Xi. President, all-power leader of China right now. So lots of interesting things happen with these wannabe elites meeting this week. This one here and then also the Davos meeting in China. I would estimate it might be interesting to check out their agendas and see who's speaking there, what they're talking about, what they're focusing on. Might reveal some things worth knowing.
And there's so many things we didn't have time to get into, like that coup in Russia thing.
Yeah,
really
a lot of weird stuff.
What Hitler couldn't do, what Napoleon couldn't do, this guy just drove all these tanks in there. Just saying. We're talking north-south there, but we see a lot of east-west.
Yeah.
Between the Taiwan, China, Russia, it's hit the world. I don't know, and I don't know if my news feed's been taken over or something, but a lot of the stuff I just see a lot of articles constantly, more than I've seen on many different times, pushing Taiwan and Ukraine, even using like World War III in their titles, even though I think we're in like 4 or 5 by now. But
seems like some people definitely want a conflict, or at least feel like they might benefit from it. I don't know if anybody will benefit if it happens, but right now it just seems like more fear-mongering, saber-rattling, keep the people afraid kind of thing.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
It's been a great episode.
It has been. Thank you guys for joining us. We're going to be doing the show regularly. I'm in town. Be moving close to Micah, right outside that window, and we'll be moving there. And we'll be doing the show often, so we hope to hear from you guys. We've mentioned before, we'll mention it again. Just like I play my music, Micah brings music to the table. A lot of the music we share are things people just send to us or that we picked up along our travels that we're interested in. If you make music, if you know people who make music and they want more exposure, any genre, we play all kinds of stuff. So we would love to add more to our little playlist here so we can share some music with you guys.
If you know someone or are someone that's having a release, we'd like to give it a listen and see about maybe talking to you about, what inspired you to do this or where you're hoping to go or about the release party. We do like to talk to other people on the show. We've spoken to dramatists, the presidential candidates, musicians, poets, all kinds of people. So we thank everybody who joins the dialogue here in the chat, etc. But we, anyone who's watched this show knows, we do like guests. So if you've got someone you think would fit, or you think yourself have something to add, we'd like to maybe have you come on here or call in. You can just do it from the convenience of your own home. So look forward to talking to y'all again next week, even if it's just to share the articles and the music and hang out. But yeah, y'all have a good week. Take care of yourselves.
See you soon, guys. We'll be back next week. Enjoy this song.
arms, let's go. And I can't get you out of my skin. Wrap me in your arms, let's go. And
I'll be ready to go, go, go. Soon as it drop, I flow. Keeping it rocking, nobody stopping. Music beyond our control, it's a rebel, yeah. The soul within and beyond. Light strong, keeping it on as we traverse through this Babylon. It's a crooked road. My people been walking, and some disappeared soon as they started talking. When they try to turn the mind control signal off, that's when the goons come a-knocking. But there's too many of us, they can't touch all of us. Either way, we be rising up. We are unified, our forces have multiplied, and our souls have been fortified. Cause some have an appetite for the frequency of rights, with a tendency to feed in the night. What do we do with the vampires of this empire? We bring them to the light, to the light, to the light, to the light. That's right. Face them in the light, in the light, in the light. Face them in the light. Torches blazing, the curtain is raising. People embracing the changes, coming with the kingdom running, and we tumbling the whole foundation. Raised in a concrete jungle, from the inside watching all of it crumble. I prayed for the day that people awake, together we break from the struggle. There's too many of us, they can't touch all of us. Either way, we be rising up. We are unified, our forces have multiplied, and our souls have been fortified. Cause some have an appetite for the frequency of rights, with a tendency to feed in the night. What do we do with the vampires of this empire? We bring them to the light, to the light, to the light, to the light. That's right. Face them in the light, in the light, in the light. Face them in the light. It's the only thing to do when the world's so dark. To light that inner spark and let it shine real hard. I drive that message like a stake through the heart and put a light upon the shadows. Oh, 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 oh. All of the shadows. Oh, 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 oh.
a selfish haze. Putting family after fun, always looking out for number one. I can't close that shame, cause now that the fog's rolled out, I see how deeply flawed I used to be. And I'm by no stretch perfect now, but at least I possess the tools to take a step back, gain some perspective away. Your head's high, take a deep breath, testing things through. Take a second to relax. Rarely ever does logic outweigh emotions, so gotta try to keep a level head. But still some days I feel like smashing this guitar, going from rounds with a brick wall. I wanna see my knuckles bleed. I wanna fly right off the handle, chug a fist, shatter the bottle. But that conduct ain't constructive and don't solve anything. You see in red, no room for forethought. What path we tread, let's go let it go, babe. No outlet, no whole team, we only find solace and frame the thread. It's like I talk to my younger self. I'm not certain they'd listen, but I try to express how important it is to forgive yourself. It's never too late to change to go, but always remember you reap what you sow. So don't fall into the same old rhythms, just take the advice and for help. Because someday you'll feel like smashing this guitar, going 12 rounds with a brick wall. You'll wanna see them knuckles bleed. You wanna fly right off the handle, chug a fist, shatter the bottle. But that conduct ain't constructive and don't solve anything.
Watch the news, buy that new, follow rules, eat the foods, copy shoes every day cause we program. They all pick what we choose, all the same, who is who, everything that we do, we program. Watch the news, buy that new, follow rules, eat the foods, copy shoes every day cause we program. They all pick what we choose, all the same, who is who, everything that we do, we program.
They want us brainwashed till we have the same thoughts, say the wrong thing and they'll put us in the same box. One world, one currency and no God. I won't let them piss on me and tell me that it's raindrops. Lies where they selling that, truth they don't tell us that. I don't care if you a Republican or a Democrat, ain't hearing what you telling me. We are not the enemy, they pushing their narrative through these Hollywood celebrities. We living in a matrix, every day the same shit. You don't like the history, you just try to erase it. You don't like something to somebody, you replace it. Everything is sexist, everything is racist. Every claim is baseless, everything is tainted. I love my life but the American dream is so tasteless. Time that we face it, I don't fear no man. Why you think they've been calling these TV shows programs?
Watch the news, buy that new, follow rules, eat the foods, copy shoes every day cause we program. They all pick what we choose, all the same, who is who, everything that we do, we program. Watch the news, buy that new, follow rules, eat the foods, copy shoes every day cause we program. They all pick what we choose, all the same, who is who, everything that we do, we program.
Capitalism got us trapped in a prison, killing people over Jordans while they laughing and chilling. The liquor store and fast food got you in a bad mood. Our lives politicized, don't really value criminals, lock up citizens, killing all the witnesses. What type of bullshit is this? The world that we living in. There's an app to find love, there's an app to buy drugs, there's no app to find us. While they're spraying our crops, they want you hating the cops, they want you hating your moms, they want you hating your pops. Want us hating each other, that's how they divide and conquer. Sell your soul if you want an easy way to the top. I've been praying to God, I know we here in the car. They just playing your emotions, got you feeling it all. It's love over here, not that fake stuff neither. I'll deprogram myself, I don't need you.
Watch the news, buy that new, follow rules, eat the foods, copy shoes every day cause we program. They all pick what we choose, all the same, who is who, everything that we do, we program. Watch the news, buy that new, follow rules, eat the foods, copy shoes every day cause we program. They all pick what we choose, all the same, who is who, everything that we do, we program.
You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.